I shall be talking to you today about the Indian system of arguments and debates. There was a period of thought which is called the Scholastic Period in Indian philosophy, where various streams of philosophical thought, various traditions had become extremely important. And as is usual, when something becomes important and there are various diverse streams, there is a vigorous philosophical debate and exchange of ideas, fight of ideas, arguments, etc. that takes place within the various schools. So that there was a extremely vigorous philosophical debate, for example, between the Nyayika logicians and the Buddhist logicians, the Buddhist thinkers and the Advaitin thinkers, etc. So there used to be vigorous Shastrartha analysis of the different Shastras or the different traditions, in which scholars used to vigorously defend and attack schools which used to oppose their thinking and their traditions. Now, in doing this, there was a certain system that was followed, and that is the system that is important for us to note. Whenever there would be any dialogue between opposing streams, it was necessary for the person who opposes to present the Purva paksha. Now, supposing there is a dialogue, argument between the Buddhists and, say, the Vedantins, the Advaitins. So, before, supposing the Buddhist puts forward an argument, that becomes the Purva paksha for the Vedantin. So, the Vedantin, what he has to do is, he has to present the Purva paksha. That means his understanding of what the Buddhist has said in as clear a manner as possible. In fact, so clear that the Buddhist can have no objection to the understanding that the Vedantin presents. So that means presenting the Purva paksha, in other words, means when I am opposing somebody's argument, I should be able to present that person's argument in the best way possible, in fact, even better than what he may have presented. So his argument I have to present to him, and he has to agree that yes, you have understood me correctly. After that, so once you have presented the Purva paksha, then the Vedantin will present his Uttara paksha. So in that Uttara paksha, that means he is replying. His position now is of a reply in which he carries out a Khandana, refutation. Khandana means refutation. Systematically, step by step, presenting the Purva paksha. During the Uttara paksha, he carries out a step by step refutation of the Purva paksha in the form of a Khandana. And after the Khandana has been fully presented, both parties, from that they come to what is called a Siddhanta, or a principle. Now, if you see this, it is somewhat akin to the Hegelian dialectic, in which there is first a thesis, that means a certain argument is presented, an antithesis, an argument which refutes that thesis, and finally the two combine and form a synthesis. So, thesis opposite to that antithesis, and combining of the two, synthesis, that synthesis becomes again a thesis against which there can be an antithesis. Again there is a synthesis, and that is how Hegelian dialectic proclaims that the progression of thought and intellectual discourse of the healthy type takes place down the decades and the centuries. You can see that there is a lot of similarity between the two. Presenting of the Purva paksha, presenting the Uttara paksha, and during that Uttara paksha carrying out Khandana, refutation, and finally coming to a Siddhanta, something like this synthesis of the Hegelian dialectic. The important point to note here is that in the Indian system, when you present the Purva paksha, you have to present it in such a manner that your opponent accepts, yes, you have understood my argument correctly. Now contrast this with the manner in which debates keep taking place nowadays and at various other places. Whenever there is a debate in which there are opposite parties, what you find is there is somebody who presents an argument. And while he is presenting that argument, the opponent is itching to put forward a counter argument. Even before he has presented his full argument, he is ready with his counters. Now, how is that possible when somebody has not even completed what he or she wants to say, that the other person is ready with a counter? This is dishonesty of argument. So, unless and until you have heard the other party through fully and understood what the other person says and presented it to that person in such a manner that that person accepts, yes, you have understood me correctly, and then you go ahead and refute, isn't that the best way in which an argument can be carried out? With due understanding, with due respect, with due consideration to the opponent's argument, I present my counter argument, and in that counter argument I systematically refute whatever is worth refuting and accept what is worth accepting. If that takes place, then on the basis of that, the two come together to some sort of a consensus, or there is a victory and a defeat, whatever. And then a principle is laid down which becomes the manner in which thought progresses. If you see the debates that take place at various places, whether on different forums, or whether it is in TV, or whether it is in radio, or whether it is in various panel discussions, you find that most of the times it is somebody presenting an argument and some other person presents an absolutely flimsy refutation, absolutely tangential refutation, and then the whole argument goes somewhere absolutely haywire and nobody comes to some sort of a consensus. There is no Siddhanta put forward. If one has to have honesty in debate and one does not adopt tricks and strategies in debate, if there is, rather than having arguments, there is a discussion, then the most important thing that anybody would really do is understand the other person's point of view in a way in which it is better than what he has presented or she has presented, and then put forward a refutation. And if you put forward a refutation, then it becomes the other person has to accept what you have said. So it used to happen in these Shastrarthas, since the Purva paksha was properly presented, and the Uttara paksha, if it would be so strong, that the Purva paksha had to accept that argument. And in a number of such debates, this was found that yes, in this particular debate, for example, the Buddhists won, or in this particular debate, the Advaitins won the debate because they presented it in that way. And if the Advaitins won, means the Buddhists accepted that the Advaitins won. It was not just one way, it was accepted, and vice versa. So this, I think, is a very wholesome and a very healthy way in which debates were conducted during the Scholastic Period, which was the vibrant phase of Indian philosophy. The various streams that we know of Indian thought and the various traditions were laid down actually at that time. And that was the time when philosophy, thought, intellectual agreement and disagreement was at its peak. And that was the time when active fermentation of thought and active deliberations used to take place at various discussions, in various debates, in various fora, which is worth giving a thought to when we do our intellectual debates today. Lesson to be learned: when somebody is presenting an argument before you present a counter argument, please understand what the other person is saying, give that other person sufficient time to make his or her argument, and after that, point by point, whatever is worth refuting, it should be refuted. What cannot be refuted is to be accepted, at least temporarily, at least provisionally, and then from there one moves forward in a healthy interaction, in a healthy exchange of ideas, so that from a Purva paksha there can be an Uttara paksha, there can be Khandana, but finally there is a Siddhanta. Finally there is a principle. Finally there is a thought which both parties who are opposing each other can accept either immediately or over a certain period of time. This is a wholesome and a healthy method of debate which our forefathers followed during the phase when which philosophy was extremely active in this country, which is worth emulating in our arguments and in our discussions today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.